Hi guys, Grace Harmon alongside Robin Washut as Nebraska finishes out non-conference play with a 73-52 win over Texas A&M Corpus Christi. Now, Robin, night and day difference from the Huskers' loss to North Dakota last Saturday. What did you see from this team that wasn't there last week?
Yeah, the biggest thing, I mean, obviously that goes just beyond what they did on the court, was how they carried themselves as a team in terms of body language, energy, enthusiasm, all the things that were severely lacking in that North Dakota game. They went to that North Dakota game thinking they could just show up and win. And when times got hard, there was nobody there to pick each other up. They weren't talking. Guys were hanging their heads. They were, yelling at each other. It was just kind of all the things that make for the result you get, like we saw against North Dakota. Well, this week, Fred Hoiberg and his staff hammered all of those things hard all week as when they got back home from Christmas break, and you saw it. I mean, from the even though the shots weren't falling, they started like 1 of 10 from the field or something like that. It was ugly, but guys were high-fiving. They were picking each other up. A guy would fall down the court, 3 guys would go run to pick him up and get him off the floor, and encouraging each other. And it may seem like a little thing, and it doesn't show up in any box score, but that is as conducive to team success as anything as you're going to find, especially for a team like this that is still growing every time it steps onto the floor. So that, outside of getting the victory, was as promising and delightful, I'm sure, for Fred Hoiberg to see, especially going into Big Ten play, where there are no breaks, to get some momentum, play the way they did, and then see those types of little things going on with your team in between plays. That was probably the best thing that could have happened in their final non-conference test.
Yes, so night and day difference, obviously. And Nebraska, as you mentioned, struggled on the offensive side of the ball, but defensively weren't too shabby. What'd you see from them today?
Yeah, that was probably, you always take the opponent into consideration with this, but so far that was by far their best defensive performance of the season. You look at the numbers, the 31% shooting was good, but they forced 21 turnovers and scored 24 points off those 21 turnovers. And for a team that itself shot 34% from the field, there was a stretch where they were 7 of 25 from 3-point range. Deshaun Burks 1 of 13 from the field. It was like pulling teeth to score for a while there. But defensively, they kept control of the game. They were active defensively and really pressuring the ball, creating a lot of mistakes for Texas A&M Corpus Christi, which is exactly what they needed to do, especially with the struggles they were having on the offensive end. So they were able to create points through their defense, and that's exactly what Fred Hoiberg wants to see. When things aren't coming easy, you got to find ways to make it easy, and you make things easy by putting in the effort on the other end of the floor. So, it was an ugly offensive day in a lot of different ways, but the fact that they were able to make up for it, and like I said, control that game essentially from start to finish with their effort defensively, something that we haven't been able to say a lot from this team this season, was another positive sign, going into league play.
And so, speaking of which, going into league play, Nebraska will now face a 18-game, I believe, schedule against Big Ten opponents. Where is this team maybe from where they were at the start of the season? Are they a little more well-equipped to face some of these opponents?
Yeah, the 2 early league games they had in the beginning of December were certainly encouraging. The fact that they went to Indiana amid some difficulties, with the suspension of Gervais Green and whatnot. They were 18-point dogs, and they took the Hoosiers, who were, I think, 10-1, 9-1 in that game, to overtime and had multiple chances to win. Less than 48 hours later, they returned to Lincoln and whipped Purdue. And they controlled Purdue from start to finish, and really, that was as good of a game as they played all year. And so, the North Dakota, that's what made that North Dakota game such a disappointing, step back. But inconsistency has kind of been the name of the game for this team all season long. There are points where they look so good, and if they put it all together, you think they can compete with anybody. Then North Dakota happens. Then Georgia Tech happens. Then Creighton happens, to where all of a sudden you're second guessing everything that you thought that you had learned about this team after some promising performances. So I think that's going to be something they're going to continue to fight all year long. Where there's going to be times in these final 18 games where they look really good, and suddenly you're kind of re-examining how you're viewing the rest of Big Ten play to go. But then there's going to be times when they just can't put it together, and they get frustrated, and they let their emotions get the best of them. That's just what we've seen. The one thing that we know about this team is that they're wildly inconsistent. And so just when you think that you have an idea about what they're going to do on a night-to-night basis, they're going to do something completely opposite. But at least I think in terms of just growing together as a team, and this was as good of an example of it as we've seen. They're making progress. Guys are starting to gel together. They're finding roles. They're talking on the floor, and I think guys are starting to take some ownership and some leadership roles, which was totally absent at the beginning of the year. So the wins and losses certainly aren't where they want this thing to be, but I think in terms of those little things, those tiny steps that make a team, we're seeing progress there. So now the test gets for real with 18 straight league games, but for a team that generally tends to play up to its competition, I think that might be a good thing.
Yeah. Well, consistency will for sure be the name of the game for this Huskers team going forward. Nebraska will be back in action here at PBA as they take on Rutgers next Friday. Well, for HuskerOnline.com, I'm Grace Harmon and Robin Washut.